3 million years ago, Earth was a wild and cruel world. Vast grasslands stretched under the scorching sun. Screaming, choking, gasping sounds.
Hot winds blew across endless yellow grasslands, where giant herds of animals roamed for food. Amidst that harsh world, small prehistoric tribes had to wander everywhere to find food and avoid fearsome predators. But none of them knew that a danger even more terrifying than wild beasts was silently emerging.
On a large mango tree in the middle of the savannah, dozens of bats hung upside down on high branches.
They bit into ripe mangoes, letting the juice drip onto the dry ground. From their mouths flowed a strange black liquid.
But to the hungry prehistoric people, those fruits were like precious gifts from nature.
That day, 4 hunters from a small tribe were looking for food. After many hours of wandering under the hot sun, they discovered the mango tree full of fruit. Joy was evident on their tired faces. One quickly climbed the tree. Ripe mangoes were picked and passed down to those below. They ate ravenously, letting mango juice run down their chins and chests. No one knew that.
In the saliva of those bats, an ancient pathogen existed. Just a moment later, a horrifying event occurred.
One of the group suddenly fell backward onto the ground. He clutched his neck, screaming in pain. His eyes turned stark white. His body convulsed violently.
Then suddenly, he sprang up and lunged at those around him like a wild beast.
The remaining 3 were terrified. They had to struggle to avoid the frenzied scratches of their recently infected friend. After a chaotic struggle, they finally escaped. But their hearts were filled with worry. They couldn't abandon their kin. After deliberation, they decided to return. The mangoes on the tree were used as bait. They set traps around the area. When the infected person progressed, they quickly rushed out to restrain him. After a dangerous struggle, they finally tied him to a large tree. News quickly reached the tribe. The elders and the tribe's medicine man immediately arrived. They observed the sick person for a long time. Then, they went into the forest to find familiar medicinal plants. Dry branches were gathered. A fire was lit.
Medicinal leaves were placed in the fire. Thick smoke began to rise. They blew medicinal smoke onto the sick person's body, while rubbing crushed leaves on him.
The entire tribe waited anxiously. A day and then a night passed. Finally, the man began to calm down. His breathing became more regular. His eyes gradually returned to normal. When he opened his eyes, those around him breathed a sigh of relief.
The strange illness had been repelled. He was saved. From that day on, the tribe understood that.
Nature not only provides food, but sometimes also harbors invisible dangers.
They learned to be more cautious with what they ate and drank. And thanks to unity, wisdom, and knowledge from nature,
humanity had overcome one of the first challenges in its history of survival.
A new day dawned, bright sunlight filtering through ancient foliage, signaling a peaceful morning in the primordial era.
4 Homo habilis, the first humans, continued their journey to find food.
They moved slowly, their eyes scanning all around, wary of every change in the forest.
A new day dawned, bright sunlight filtering through ancient foliage, signaling a peaceful morning in the primordial era. After a while, their patience was rewarded when a herd of wild boars appeared from behind the bushes.
Without words, they signaled to each other with glances and soft sounds.
The chase began. Bare feet trampled dry leaves, crossing ancient tree roots at astonishing speed.
After a breathless chase, with primitive skill and intelligence, they had cornered a rather large wild boar. The struggle was fierce between wild strength and human will. Finally, with the coordination of the members, the prey was brought down. Cheers of victory echoed through a corner of the forest. After a breathless chase, with primitive skill and intelligence, they had cornered a rather large wild boar. As darkness fell, the fire, the greatest miracle of prehistoric times, blazed brightly. Fresh pieces of meat were placed on the glowing fire. The aroma spread, dispelling the cold and fear of the vast night. They gathered together, eating and laughing happily, sharing the fruits of a long day of hardship. The flickering fire illuminated their radiant faces, blurring the line between animal instinct and nascent humanity. In that moment, what was cooked over the glowing fire was not just pieces of meat to sustain life, but the warmth of kinship and the strength of unity. Millions of years ago, when Earth was young and wild, the world did not belong to humans. It belonged to giant creatures, those who dominated the deep forests, the seas, and the sky.
Humans at that time were just small, weak creatures, living by instinct and perseverance.
The deep red sun hung low on the horizon, shining down on a desolate and cracked savanna. The dry land seemed to have been drained of life. Long, winding cracks like wounds that never healed. Amidst that deadly space, two small figures walked silently. They were husband and wife. The last prehistoric humans remaining from a vanished tribe. Clothes made of tattered animal skins.
Their bodies were emaciated from hunger. They didn't speak a word to each other, not because they didn't want to,
but because they had no strength left. Every step was a challenge to death. They walked aimlessly across the savannah, without direction.
unsure if they would still be alive tomorrow.
Food had run out many days ago.
The animals that were once their source of life had now disappeared, either dead from drought or hunted to extinction. Before them, the savanna opened up to a horrifying sight. A vast area where the bones of dead animals lay scattered. Giant skeletons piled up, stark white under the harsh sun.
There were creatures once as tall as mountains. Now only gaping jaws remained, as if screaming in silence.
There were no birds, no insects. Only the wind blowing through white bones, creating a chilling sound like wailing. The wife squeezed her husband's hand tightly. In her eyes, there was not only fear, but also despair.
They continued to walk. Before them, in the hazy mist, a cave appeared. The deep and dark cave.
The cave entrance opened wide like a giant creature waiting to devour its prey. No one knew what was inside.
But in this world, danger and hope often reside in the same place. The wife stopped.
Her instinct told her this place was not safe. She stayed outside, her eyes fixed on the darkness ahead.
He nodded to his wife, without a word, then entered the cave. Darkness swallowed him immediately.
At first, there was only eerie silence. Then a pungent, foul smell assailed his nose.
Faint, slithering sounds echoed from everywhere, like thousands of cold breaths moving at once.
He took a few more steps, and then, before his eyes, hell appeared. Thousands, tens of thousands of snakes coiled tightly together, covering the cave floor, walls, and ceiling.
They slithered, piled on top of each other like a giant living mass. Cold eyes reflected the faint light from the cave entrance.
Twinkling like countless dead stars.
Just a small sound was enough to awaken the entire swarm.
Fear choked the husband's chest. Without thought, without hesitation, he turned and fled. Footsteps echoed in the cave, followed by angry hisses from behind. He rushed out, panting. Panicked eyes. Without explanation, the wife understood everything.
They left immediately, abandoning the cave and the horror behind them.
The sun slowly set, painting the sky blood red. The two small humans continued to walk across the barren savanna.
They found no food that day, nor a safe haven. But they kept going. In that harsh prehistoric world, life did not belong to the strongest.
But to those who refused to give up. Despite hunger, despite fear, despite only a faint glimmer of hope.
And somewhere, in the endless flow of time, those small footsteps. Had begun humanity's journey of existence. Pale red light stretched across the vast savanna of ancient Africa.
In a sparse forest, a small group of prehistoric people began to wake up. They had no sturdy homes, no sophisticated tools.
Only crude stone spears, animal skins draped over their bodies, and survival instincts honed over generations.
There were 3 people in the group. They were the remaining members of a small tribe that had to constantly move to avoid predators and find food.
Last night, they slept very little. The roars of large beasts echoed from afar throughout the night, keeping them constantly alert.
But when dawn came, fear temporarily receded. A new day began. And with it came the familiar struggle, finding food to survive. The group left the forest, heading out into the vast savanna. Hot winds blew through the chest-high grass.
In the distance, herds of antelopes moved gracefully across the vast land. For many predators, it was a perfect meal.
But not for humans of that era. They were not fast enough to chase antelopes.
They were also not strong enough to bring down large beasts. In fact, most of the time, humans were merely scavengers.
The 3 men walked silently across the savanna. Occasionally, they stopped, observing footprints on the ground, hoping to find signs of a wounded animal or a discarded carcass. But today, there was nothing.
Time passed, the sun rose higher, and hunger began to gnaw at their stomachs. After many hours of searching without hunting anything, one of the men pointed into the distance. There was a stream flowing across the savanna. They decided to head straight for the stream. Water not only quenched their thirst, it was also a place where many small creatures gathered: fish, shrimp, crabs, food sources that humans could catch more easily.
Upon arrival, they knelt to drink water. The cool stream flowed over smooth, round rocks.
After a while, the 3 men began to search by touch in the water. After some searching, the 3 men came ashore.
In their hands was a small pile of spoils, a few fish, a few shrimp. Not a big feast, but for them, it was life.
The 3 men happily walked back to their temporary shelter. The sun was slowly setting in the west.
The oldest man in the group began to light a fire. Just a moment later, the fire blazed, orange-red flames dancing in the evening air. The fish and shrimp were placed on thin wooden sticks to grill. The aroma gradually spread. For modern humans, it was just a very small meal. But for them, it was the result of an entire day battling nature. The 3 men sat around the fire. They ate slowly, sharing each piece of grilled fish.
No one spoke much, but their eyes shone with relief. At least, today, they would not starve.
The sun slowly set below the horizon. The sky dyed deep red. In the distance on the savannah, in the forest, the roars of predators began to echo. The three small humans sat by the fire, the light from the flames reflecting on their tired faces.
They didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Maybe they would find more food.
Maybe they would have to flee from a giant predator. But right now, by the small fire in the vast wild world, they were still here.
And as the fire continued to burn in the prehistoric night, one thing became clear. It was those small humans, with their perseverance and survival instincts, who began humanity's long journey on Earth.
Their story was not over. It had only just begun.